And then I did put out a book of poetry as well. And of course,
Nice.
that's no shortage of dream type prompts to those. I mean, they just
Absolutely.
occur from nowhere.
Another one of the most famous is Samuel Taylor Coleridge's Kubla Khan came from a dream.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's a great story too. It's like when I tell people follow your dreams, they know the way, or sleep on it. I mean these things literally. I mean your dreams will show you things, and you can, if you pay attention and want to understand, you probably can, and it'll tell you something. There is a message in there, or there's an understanding that can be gained from it. Greetings, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Dreamscapes. Today, our guest dreamer is Dr. Lou Pugliese. He's a former automotive executive and retired professor of organizational development. He's also the author of I said this so smoothly when I was reading it back to you. Like, here, what if I say this? Now I can't for the life of me. The author of Blame It on the Moon and the Final Exam, which is a prequel to the first one, and the forthcoming title, The Portal, will be available soon. You can find him at loupuglieseauthor.com, and the spelling of that name and the link is in the description below. For my part, would you kindly like, share, and subscribe? Tell your friends. Always need more volunteer dreamers. I do video game streams most days of the week, Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Pacific. This episode is brought to you in part by ABC Book 18, entitled Oniro Chronologia, Volume 4, Prima Reliquarum, or as Latin for the first of what remains, or the first of the rest. And you can find that, of course, at BenjaminTheDreamWizard.com, including downloadable or live streamable audio-only MP3s of this very podcast. And if you'd head on over to BenjaminTheDreamWizard.locals.com, building a community there. It is free to join, attached to my Rumble account. That is more than enough out of me. But Lou, thank you for being here. I appreciate your time.
Thanks. I appreciate your time as well.
Very cool. We're going to have fun talking about dreams. Actually, you'd mentioned right before we officially started the show, like we just did, that the inspiration for one of your books came from a dream. And I mentioned Samuel Taylor Coleridge, Kubla Khan poem, which you can actually find a version of that on my AI radio channel. I turned it into a song. Very cool. I'm going to promote myself too a little bit, but we're going to talk about you. I promise. I'm so bad at that. And the idea that Robert Louis Stevenson has famously wrote a poem, wrote an article or an essay about how he was inspired by his dreams to write some of his, I think maybe Treasure Island. I don't know that one specifically, but he'd say brownies, little people would come to him in his dreams and act out scenes, and he'd be like, "Okay, let's write it. Let's put that in a book." And then you mentioned that you had a dissertation on that as well, and that reminded me of another book that I republished. It's ABC Book 14. It is Dreams in Homer and Greek Tragedy, and it is literally the application, the dissertation of a guy who is applying to join the faculty of philosophy at a university, Columbia, I think, but way back when, late 1800s, early 1900s, and it was all about how dreams were represented by Homer in the Iliad and the Odyssey, and how it was also represented in various Greek tragedy plays. And he goes through them and lists and talks about it. And there's a lot of Greek translations in there and footnotes that take up multiple pages. So I put those in the back. Like, footnotes are fantastic, but they should be short. Like, here's this guy and the date of his birth, and here's what he's famous for. Let's move on. But in my opinion, I always add new footnotes. But I wanted to ask you more about yours that you said, you can get through the university press, which I think I'm rambling today, but too much coffee probably. But it shocks me that some of those books are so expensive when it should be the other way around. It's a public, or even if it's private, but a university, it was like knowledge should be the cheapest book possibly available through that, because it shouldn't be a profit motive to get education and information out to people. I don't know if you wanted to, let me stop there. Let me throw it back to you. And I don't know if you wanted to discuss that dissertation a little bit and what it was about and how it relates to dreams.
We can do that. The dissertation was actually not dream related, but it was driven by, the dissertation is on the roots of prejudice.
Gotcha.
It's something called, the word is entitativity. And it's pretty obscure. Probably myself and about 7 other people on the planet get deeply into it.
I was going to say deeply academic terminology.
It is. It gets you
vague grasp of it.
Yeah, it gets into all those languages we try not to speak. At any rate, it's the basic understanding of it is annotativity is the degree to which we hold our beliefs of others. So when we think of other, some people have low degrees of annotativity, some people have high degrees of annotativity, and it tends to be a trait that carries across. If you have low degrees of annotativity, when you form your stereotypes, because we all need stereotypes, there's too much information in the world, we have to group those things together. When we form our stereotypes, someone with low degrees of annotativity is constantly open to new information and using it to reshape that model all the time. Someone with high degrees of annotativity will at some point block out any novel information that does not agree with what they have already decided.
Interesting.
And at that point, it's prejudice.
Yeah, for sure. If you've got a very narrow conception of what someone is because of the category they appear to belong to, or even the category they do belong to, then you're not, very
And then they'll apply that
concept.
category to anyone that they think that falls into it. I mean, there's certainly some modern examples of this that are pretty stark, but there is an instrument that can measure a person's preference for degrees of annotativity. So I applied this in multiple workplaces that were all union environments. And what I was looking for is I had experienced in working with that environment what I perceived as prejudice, where there were facts available for discussions and they were completely blocked out. They were not accepted by some individuals. And it could be both labor and management, either one. And I thought, if this really is a prejudice, it's different than just being a difficult employee. If this really is a prejudice, how could we understand it, and how would we work with that? And so I had the two. I had the instrument that measured the preference for degrees of annotativity, and I had an instrument that measured workplace satisfaction that was fairly detailed. And what I was looking for was the person who had high degrees of annotativity and was really, really down on the workplace and the environment. And I thought that might point in a direction. The issue being that if that person happened to be a supervisor or a shop steward, they could be fairly destructive in the overall workplace as far as, getting anything moving forward.
A human spanner in the works.
Yeah. And so what I found, if you measure it on a gross level, there's nothing statistically significant there. But if you cross-tab it and you look at it at an individual level, fully 40% of the population had what I was looking for, the piece of concern. So I would submit that that's a strong consideration. And of course, you do diffuse prejudice differently with an individual than you do with that difficult employee. And so that was some of the prescriptive that came out of it. It could probably use further study, as we say on all educational works. But it is out there for free on George Washington University's site. That's where I'd recommend to get it rather than paying $70 on Amazon.
Yeah. Wow, that's just the price is unbelievable. That's what I'd like education to be. Well, so I price my books like I make $1, $2 off each one, and that's most of that goes to the printing cost, and Amazon takes their cut, and then I get a little on the back end. But you know, compared to most books, you're going to get something fairly substantial for relatively cheap. But if you're buying mine, so that's the best I can do for you guys out there, because I just want them out there. I want more people to be educated. You know,
the only difference in the book is titled "Thinking of Others," and the only difference is I did put in some information on. Now I'm trying to think of the has to do with the levels of study. I can't remember what the term is, but it's something very academic. At any rate, I reflected in the levels of study that some more explanation on how at the population level, you don't get the same results as you do at the individual level. And that for this particular study, that was pretty important. But aside from that, it's identical to the dissertation you would pull up and struggle to read from GW.
Gotcha. It's very interesting too. There's a bunch of analysis to do just on the concept involved, but there's two things that struck me immediately. One is that about 90% of psychology is identifying the correct problem. And that's usually what, and then the last 10% is the patient's got to work on, or the client, and you need to have functional methods for implementing and measuring change, all that good stuff. But a lot of why, therapy takes so long is you got to talk to people and not jump to conclusions. So there's even like a meta stereotyping that goes involved there. You really got to parse through this. This is why the dream process I do should really be done over multiple sessions, over weeks, months. You can do one dream for session after session, and in more traditional, say, Jungian psychology, you probably would. And what I'm doing is definitely a truncated entertainment version of it to show people the concepts and hopefully still get good answers. But so having a metric that allows you to here. I have a cat who thinks he's a dog. He wants to play fetch with my hair ties. He brings him to me in bed. He wakes me up, clawing at my sheets to throw it for him. And of course, he wants to do it in the middle of the show. I call it value-added content. I can't even be mad. Although, I don't know if you can see my hand. Its heart doesn't show up very well. I'm just covered in scratches. He likes to.
Whoops.
He's a young boy. He likes to fight. So that's a long story short on that. The flip side as well is there's also helping the client, or in this case, a worker, someone who you have to. I guess you could choose to fire someone, but then then maybe there's potential there. Maybe then you got to retrain someone. I mean, the idea is not to look for a reason to get rid of somebody, but to identify the problem to facilitate the process. I think it's a fantastic idea to say, you go to someone and you don't poke them in the chest and say you are prejudiced and that's immoral. That you put people on the defensive. I mean, there's a confrontational approach and there's a partnering approach to things. I think it's more practical, useful, pragmatic. No, it's not the right answer, but a more successful method to come to someone and say, looks like you might have an incomplete picture of a certain type of problem, and I think we can work with that to help you get a better understanding of what you're dealing with so that you can respond in a different way. That's like, it takes all the sting out of it. Even if you're telling them, wow, you got the wrong idea about people and you're kind of being a jerk. You could say things like that, but it's, a lot of times it gets to the art of diplomacy or whatnot in terms of approaching things. I don't know if you have any comments on those two concepts,
The diffusion of prejudice, a lot of the research on that comes down to facilitating getting very different people together in a way that they have to interact and allowing them to find the common ground and to learn for themselves. Like, for instance, one of the studies I ran across was a white supremacist and a Black Power advocate that were in prison who were put together and at some point discovered they both liked fishing.
Oh, yeah.
And that was enough to open up real human dialogue. Absolutely. And of course, from there, most of us are, a very high percentage interested in the same things. In good of the world. There are very few people who are just absolutely evil, but they can come across that way when blocked out by their prejudices. So again, if you can get people to closely and personally investigate common ground, you can kind of diffuse this, especially in a workplace, because there are other things that require people's attention that are common ground just by the nature of working together in that environment.
Absolutely. I think it's a big deal. It's as we, apart from a few honestly black and white issues that we can't see issues,
Right.
talking about prejudice, that we can't, there's no compromise on some things, but like most of everything else, there is a lot of commonality. And the first thing that popped into my head is, you've got to say, a black supremacist and a white supremacist get together and they're like, I think my people are the best. I agree. I think we should live separately. I agree. They're just like, well, look, we got common ground already.
Right. Yeah.
just that struck me as a funny scene. There's actually a guy named Ryan Long who's like the racists and the woke, and how they both agree about a bunch of different things.
Yes.
That was hilarious. That's fantastic. Did you have some thoughts on that?
No, but it strikes me that I have a friend who is very, very liberal, and I had another friend who was very, very not liberal, and I would get the same emails from both, each one expressing support for their opinion, and I began to believe that it's not a line with liberal on one end and conservative on the other end. It's a circle. And at the extremes,
and I think the meme on the internet is horseshoe theory. But the further you get from the center, the more you start coming back together. And actually, if you lay the horseshoe over the political compass, I don't know if you're familiar with that as a metric. It's like, where are you on authoritarian, libertarian, left, right? And that if you kind of start from a center libertarian at the bottom, like, I don't want to tell anyone what to do your thing, I'm not left, I'm not right, I got one. I tend to think of myself as one foot on each side, straddling the line, but solidly. I got all these different opinions. But then the further you go towards left and right, and then it kind of both come back together way near the top as this authoritarian version of their own way of doing things, and that do share a lot of common beliefs. Very interesting. I personally think the political compass needs to be a cube, but I'm not sure what the z-axis is. I've been working on that in my head. I just let things percolate. I call it. It's like making coffee. It'll be ready when it's ready. I don't know how long it's going to take. That's fascinating too, is there's many stories, and this is one of the great things I kind of built in a way by doing this historical dream literature. I've built my own masterclass in dream interpretation and understanding of dreams, because I've just read everything that everyone's ever written up to a certain point. At some point, I'm going to need to get into, now post 1920 research, because we did learn some new things recently. But the idea that, oh, wow, where was I going with that? Damn. Oh, that happens all the time.
The political compass and the conceptual design of
there we go. Yes, thank you. No, and well, the idea of the then going meta on all that, but the idea of there are many stories of people who could not force themselves into an epiphany, and just discussing that concept where, man, these things come in their own time, and they mentioned two things and they related them together, which is one. I'll bring it back, I swear. That it was the concept of take a break. If you're frustrated and you're deep in a thing and it's not coming together, and you're trying to force an epiphany, get up and take a walk and think about something else for a minute. Smell the air, listen to the birds, watch nature, stretch your legs. And the number of stories that people have, extolling the virtues of such a process is, there's something about inattention. There's something about taking your focus off it that like relieves some pressure that was built up around the possible solution, and then allows the solution to kind of filter out. And that's actually what happens in dreams too. There's a bunch of stories of people who are like, there was a guy who invented some valve or mechanism or something, and the answer to a problem he spent weeks trying to solve, he woke up one morning, he's like, that's it, I got it. It's his dream solved the problem. So when I tell people to sleep on it, I don't just mean give it time for you to reconsider. I mean literally go to sleep and And I can't tell you the number of times that's happened to me too, where I go to bed not having an answer to something that's been bothering me. And I wake up in the morning, I know exactly what I want to do. And I don't even have a memory of a dream associated with it, but that
Yep.
had to have occurred in my sleep. I didn't go to bed with the answer. I got it in that period of time. That's just fascinating. That's why I was trying to bring that back.
Part of the writing process that I've come to trust. So I'm at the current book that I'm working on as of a couple of days ago. I've been frittering away at this thing for, gosh, I don't know how many months, maybe a year or more. And I didn't know how to end it.
Mm.
And it didn't worry me because I've got enough experience in my own, the way the writing comes to me. It's more of channeling than creating.
Yeah.
And so I know when I just know it's going to come. So I don't worry. People ask me about writer's block, and I said, well, I've never had it. I've had times where I've said, I need to trust and I need to sleep and I need to allow this to emerge. And it always has. It's pretty interesting process.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. That's, I find some of my best ideas. Like I've got an idea for a sci-fi fantasy crossover thing. It's for 30 years. It's been in my head, and I know all the characters, and I know the basic landscape. I don't have the bones of the story exactly, but what I've been doing is when I'm distracted by something else, ideas will pop into my head, and I'll just write them down. It's like I can't sit at a typewriter and just make a story. I've never understood that at all. But the idea of at some point you do have to sit down and write. You got to say, okay, now let me take all these ideas and put them on paper. But just trusting that, eventually, and also having a notepad handy. This works with dreams. You want a dream journal by your bed, and some people use a recording. That you can use your phone. You could speak it into your phone. It'll turn it into text, that kind of thing. But you can also just have, like I do, these notepads I keep around. And one of the things I've learned is that the muse whispers, and only once. It's like if it's gone, it's gone. You better get it while you can. So I was going somewhere with that too. But so we should probably talk about how your a dream you had inspired the first book, and then what genre is it into? I didn't ask anything about that yet.
Okay, the first book, well, I woke up one morning and I told my wife I had been working on the book that became Final Exam for, I guess 4+ years. And at one point early on in that 4+ years, I got excited that I had created a book. I had, 63,000 words of book. So I started submitting it to agents and thought, well, we're off to the races now. We'll get screenplay and we'll get, everything else that comes with submitting your book to an agent and getting a publisher. And of course, what I got instead was about 120 rejection letters from agents. But I didn't know what I didn't know at that point. And I was fortunate enough to have gone to high school with somebody who was married to a very successful author and was willing to get us together for a lunch. And he shared with me, his name is John Gilstrap. He has a bunch of successful series. And he shared with me that you've made a change in your life by deciding to go into fiction writing. And here's some things you need to do. You need to learn the craft. You need to join the associations. You need to participate. You need to go to the conventions. You need to make the connections. And so over the next 3 years or so of doing that, at one point, I woke up and I told my wife I had a dream. And I know it's significant. For one reason, I remember it very vividly. And that's really unusual. I dream a lot, but I don't remember things. By the time have been to the restroom and back, it's pretty much gone. It's fog. But this dream I had. And so the first thing I did that morning was sat at my laptop and typed out all the details I could remember of it. And then I left it alone. And when I came back to it, I had some more thoughts based on that. And ultimately, that became 83,000 words of Blame It on the Moon.
Hmm.
So the book I had been working on for years that wasn't necessarily ready for prime time, I sort of shifted to the side and I went full time into Blame It on the Moon. And through that process, there were several times where I was stopped and I didn't know how the pieces were going to fit together. But I said to my wife, I said, I know I'll wake up in the morning and I'll have dreamt it, or during a nap, I'd get enough little pieces that helped fill in. Eventually, I had a complete book, and it was a book that was worthy of publishing. So I did. I put it out there. I self-published it. And that's partially because of my age. I'm too old at this point to go through the get the agent, get the editor, get the publisher, get the 4 or 5 years later, you have a book.
Yeah.
And then you start the process all over again. Well, at that rate, I might get 2 books out before I'm dead. And I know I want more.
Mm-hmm.
So I self-published the book. It had a pretty good release. Within a couple of weeks, I had sold more books than a self-published author is supposed to sell in a lifetime, which is 250 books is what they say you might sell in a lifetime.
Yeah.
So at any rate, then I went back to Final Exam because one of the characters in Blame It on the Moon was the most significant, was actually the protagonist for Final Exam. And by writing Blame It on the Moon, and the character became something so solid to me that it changed the first book, and it changed it into a way that was ultimately marketable. Now, both books still have some scenes that are a little disturbing for some readers. Both of them have either something sexual or something very descriptive, graphic murder type scene.
Mm-hmm.
For the most part, they've both been received very well. But every once in a while, I'll get that my most recent review, which was from an international source, was pure rubbish. They really stopped at one of the torture murder scenes, and I get that, and I understand it. Those aren't for everyone, but there were reasons why I felt they were important to leave somewhat as is. So
that's the kind of quote I would put on the back of the book. Pure rubbish, says this. I'd be like, I would wear that like a badge of honor. That's fantastic.
I am sort of proud of that because it's it's like, no, you are not the reader that I was looking for or that I was hoping to entertain in this way. But yeah, so the first book, it totally emerged from a dream. The process of relying on dreams to go somewhere, and then the impact that grew out of that to fix the other book and to inform the coming book. All of it goes back to that one dream that started the process and got me actually into publishing my own fiction.
Very cool. And so before we started, I was like, I think I'm forgetting something. I completely forgot to ask how you wanted to do the dream thing when we shift into it. Did you want to discuss that dream in particular and try and do what I call a stump the wizard section where you don't tell me too much, you let me ask questions and then see if I can suggest something that's close to your understanding of it? Or did you have a completely different dream that we're going to do for the interpretation section, and then we can actually get into that dream and how it influenced the publication of the book? I don't know how you want to approach it.
I don't know. I suppose I could. I mean, one might be to read the chapter of the book that was the finished interpretation on my end of the dream. Although that's very much just a description of a scene. I don't know
Okay.
if that helps or.
Maybe. There's a lot of different ways to approach it because, as we were saying, Robert Louis Stevenson, he would just have his dreams weren't. He didn't treat them as interpretable personal psychology type of. He felt that they were acting out scenes that he would then put into a book. It sounds like that's more on the side of things that you are now. That dream may also have a personal meaning, but then also you just, well, that's just a cool scene, and so I'm going to put it in the book. It's always good to do the most recent or most fresh dream that has relation to your current life, things that are going on, because then we get interesting or unique insights, and it may be more personally useful. And then that also allows us to talk about the other dream with some spoilers in a way that makes it a more interesting discussion about how that relates to the book. I don't know. Do you have a dream that's more recent that we could do? Okay, let's do that one for the interpretation. Go ahead.
I have a very recent one that was quite vivid, and I felt compelled to write down. In fact, I've got pages and pages of every one of these, because once I had the original one and did the book, I'm like, I'm not going to lose another one of those.
Yeah.
So every time I have a vivid enough dream, I don't know where it fits, but I record it, and I write down the details that I can remember.
Absolutely.
So I have dog barking in the background. I hope your filter covers that.
Oh yeah, no, I couldn't hear it at all. No worries.
Okay.
Yeah,
excellent.
definitely.
Because my dog may join in here shortly.
You're right.
He by the way, is featured in the book, in the first book.
Very nice. I'll probably have cats somewhere in one of my books someday, and I'm definitely doing the self-published thing too, because I just want to get them out there, and I don't want to deal with the hassle of publishing houses. I think that's actually kind of dying down. There used to be a lot more gatekeeping, so that means there's going to be a lot more garbage out there to sort through, and it's going to be tough, even tougher for a new author to break through. But I'm also thinking of doing it in a little different way. There's I think Japanese anime is some of the best modern storytelling that available, hands down. And a lot of them, more than I even realized, were adaptations of what are called Japanese light novels. And they're usually published as not chapter books, but novellas, a series of novellas that all add up to something. Right. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, that's probably what I've been waiting 30 years for, is a concept of how to tell the story that I've got in my head and who these characters are. There's a lot I'm working on. I'm probably a few years off from even starting, but I think that's what I'm going to do. And then almost imagining it like writing to the idea of an anime adaptation. And then if I'm lucky, maybe someone, it'll be popular and someone will go, this should be a cartoon, and they'll make it. But just that episodic nature of it. And then there's a little less pressure on, coming up with a Lord of the Rings trilogy, where it's epic and each book is 1,000 pages or whatever. But okay, getting off of me, but talking back to you. So it sounds like what you experienced, I don't know if you're familiar with how George Lucas came to get Star Wars made and the origins of that story. Well, it's basically the same thing that happened to you. He wanted to film, I think it was originally the title for his story in the series he wanted to do was, it's like the Adventures of Luke Star Killer. And they're like, well, let's change killer to, how about Skywalker instead? That's interesting. It's a more spiritual journey type of sound. But anyway, that was a suggestion someone made to him. And he wanted to start with the prequels that we didn't get until 25 years after the original came out. So his process was helped along by the studio saying, this stuff's kind of boring, but you know where it gets interesting? Chapter 4 with Star Wars. Let's call it Star Wars. And then he got to make that movie, even though he had spent years working on the actual story, which was the prequels. And you kind of have a similar thing going on with you.
Yes.
But I think that was probably necessary to his process of, like, he could not have gotten to Star Wars and made it what it was, as successful as it was, without having that backstory in mind. And then just like, here's where all the characters came from. Here's who they are and what they've done. And now let's show them in conflict. And bam, now you got a story. And then he can go back and tell the other story later, which was interesting. It was more political intrigue and the ramping up to war, or to the action in Star Wars. So I just want to throw that out. You're in good company with that one.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
And I think that's probably where I'm headed too. Is like I need a little more backstory on the guy. Like I need to, in almost Robert Louis Stevenson's Brownies style. I think I need these characters to act on their own. I just need to put them in a scenario, and then they're going to tell me what they're going to do based on who they are. And I don't think I have a solid conception of that. I'm also working on the idea of get AI tools being a thing. Now, not only can I do graphics, that's a big thing with the Japanese light novels, is they're not comics. They're not full panels of graphics. Like that's manga. That's an actual thing. But it's written words on a page, but every so often they've got the characters in an image on the page. And it's usually drawn anime style. But it'll show you, here's the, main characters around a table. Here's them in combat. And here's some moment when the hero confesses his love, that kind of thing. I was going somewhere with all that too. Damn. Wow. I do that to myself. Like my brain, this is actually part of my process too. And why I'm completely spontaneous. We were talking about where inspiration comes from. And this is how I do the dream interpretation thing too, is like, I don't prepare. I can't. That's the wrong approach. What I do is I open myself to what I call the spirit of being useful to someone else, and whatever comes through, whatever hits my brain, I say it. But then of course it makes me a terrible interviewer, and I don't ask. That's right. This is not actually an interview show. We're just two people chatting about. It's like a conversation we'd have over breakfast and a cup of coffee, or having beers at the bar or something. That's kind of how I run the show. Whatever's on my mind.
The important part is not to pick up a cell phone and actually try and fact check any of it, because it doesn't matter. It's the process.
No, that's
matters.
true. Well, that just reminded me is, okay, so now we got AI, and because I have no artistic skill in that way. I couldn't draw, I barely draw a stick figure, but I can tell an AI to do this scene with this character. But not only that, what I want is, I'm going to start using it, not have an AI write the book, but have the AI build the character, and not decide what the character is, but have a reference to, like, if I forgot something, like what happened with this thing, and I don't want to dig through my notes. I'll just ask so I want these characters, actually, I want to build, and the technology might not be there yet, but I want to build local character profiles and personality traits. And then I will maybe query it. I was like, what would you do in this scenario? And have it tell me. And either I like it or I don't, but be able to ping that off that, and then say, okay, what's your reasoning for that? Why did that character decide to act that way? Now, maybe I should be relying more on myself and like think that through myself. But I think that's a way to grease the wheels of the process in terms of, so I'm looking for that technology anyway. I just thought that was a fascinating use of it. Not to have the AI write the book. Don't do that. That's a terrible idea. Go ahead.
But a couple of things you've said, character-wise, are things that I've learned a lot about once I hunkered down to learn the craft, and to talk to the other authors, and to join the associations and get involved. One piece of it was a trust on my part to my characters, because my characters do write the book at some point. I have no idea after the first maybe third of the book where it's actually going to end up. And sometimes I'll start writing and a character will take me someplace that is totally different, and it opens up a whole new research string, and and then it's got to relate to, because these books are standalones, but they're also a series. So there are pieces for the writer who wants to read the whole series that they'll discover throughout and get answers to different things. So I trust the characters. What I don't do, I have a friend who, there's two types of writers. There's plotters and pantsters. I'm very much a pantster. I am comfortable to let the characters in the book take me where they want to take me. The plotters are the ones who might as well be writing a dissertation. Things have to follow. The chapters have to be known. The end has to be known. The milestones have to be known. And they do kind of what you're referring to, a character Bible. Mm-hmm. So I have this one plotter friend who has like a 5-page set of questions about every character. She knows their preferred chewing gum, the color of their eyes, what they might watch on TV if they were to watch TV, just agonizing details, places they've lived, things they've done, which are all interesting. And 90% of them, she admits, she'll never use.
It's never going in the book. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
But she has that level of development of that person. And I told my wife, I said, gosh, I have this one character, Audrey. I don't even know what color her eyes are.
It's never come up.
It hasn't. It hasn't mattered. But now that troubles me a little bit. But but it is interesting because I went to a book club who had read Blame It on the Moon. And one of the women in the book club said, I knew who the bad guy was almost right from the start. And I said, well, that amazes me because I did not know until about 4/5 of the way.
Interesting.
Into the book.
Yeah.
I had no idea. And it turned out the rest of the readers in that particular group didn't know either.
Gotcha.
So I think it's, one person's intuition is, you put it out for the reader and they take it wherever they want, and that's fine.
Well, when you just go ahead. Sorry.
No, you finish.
I was going to say when you described, pantser and plotter, I was thinking fly by the seat of your pants, right? Is that the illusion? Yeah, yeah. And then plotter, and I'm like, as you're describing, I'm like, I think I'm a little more of a plotter when it comes to that, because what takes me out of a story a lot of times is when there's a couple of things. It's characters acting out of character. They wouldn't do that. That's completely wrong for them. That's not something they would say. Like, how did that even make? And it smacks to me of like inattention to, or not knowing who their character is. They just said that because that was something they needed to do to advance the plot. It's like they wouldn't react that way in that situation. Not if they're consistent. So I worry about that idea. Like, I don't want to be that guy who makes that mistake. So I think maybe I'm overthinking it. I got two different ways of it. I'm highly disorganized and I overplan, and probably they're related because I'm trying to be less disorganized, unless the disorganization and spontaneity works for me, which in certain, like with the dream stuff, it usually works. But the other thing is a lack of, well, I guess maybe there's three. So the character acting out of character, the lack of subtle foreshadowing that most people, it's designed so that most people miss it. Unless, maybe the 1% will see it coming. But by the time you get to the end, you'll go look back and go, oh, I should have known that all along. I love that moment when you're like, not only is this in character, it was flagged way back when. And here we are in the third book. It's paying off from the first book. And that's the kind of experience I want to build, because that's what I enjoy. Like, if I wouldn't watch this anime or read this book, no one will. If it doesn't entertain me, if it isn't interesting to me, which is another struggle I have of, like, I've sat down to write this a couple of times in the past and I got bored by the process. I'm like, I'm not interested in anything that's happening. What is this? And maybe that was a good reason to stop. Like, I wasn't ready. Like I said, I started conceptualizing this idea 30 years ago, so maybe it'll come to fruition. And then what was the other one? It was where it seems like it just goes nowhere. In a way, it just goes like a series that doesn't know when to end, and then eventually you end it. But so I want a payoff, and I want it to be, all the good stuff of a good story. It's like, it's cathartic. It makes sense. The downfall of the villain was in the seeds of his own insanity or something. Some things like that where the hero's really challenged, and there aren't Deus Ex Machina tropes that come along. Another thing is, like, when it comes to, say, sci-fi and fantasy stuff, a lot of it is, how does the technology work? How does the magic work? And we're people who appreciate those genres want an interesting and consistent and coherent magical system. So if you have a hero that's he's got a certain range of powers, and all of a sudden in one situation he just throws up a magic shield and some projectile bounces off it, it's like, where did that power come from? He never had that power. Why would you suddenly do that? Well, because I couldn't think of anything else to do. I don't know. It's just bad writing in that. So I don't want to be that guy where people go, oh God, this is trash. I mean, they really mean it. Like, fans of the genre who know it and know the tropes are like, oh, this is just boring. It's been there, done that. So maybe I'm overthinking it because of that too. I don't want to fail at something that I'm actually excited about. And I don't want the audience to go, this wasn't very good. Yeah, why did you bother?
Need the elements of both plotter and panster.
I think so.
Ultimately, so where I'm comfortable when the character goes somewhere, and I'm like, wow, that doesn't feel like that character. I'm comfortable to allow them to go a little bit, but I also do a lot of continuity reading where I'll go back. I might be 200 pages into the book, and I'll go back and reread the whole book and see where I need that subtle red herring, or I need that.
You can always put it in later. Yeah,
little piece of foreshadowing to strengthen it. So you have to do both. I guess it's the horseshoe again.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
you're back to, you have to be open, I think, to both. And in fact, I did recently, I do for Florida Writers Association, I host a writers meeting monthly in Clay County, Florida. And so I bring in different people for different topics, subject matter experts every month. And my most recent one was my anal plotter friend and a very successful writer that's a pantster friend. And he's a pantser to the point that he wrote a whole series of books based on somebody gave him the cover images. And that was all he had to start the books. And he just wrote them out. But those two contrasting, what ultimately they needed from each other's style. Neither one was, neither one would be complete without elements of both.
Definitely.
So it's an interesting process, but
yeah. Well, no, and I think that's the golden mean in a lot of things. Is like if it has no structure, it's a mess, and if it's overly organized, you get nowhere, and you wait too long, and it probably like me, where it's like maybe I never pull the trigger because I'm waiting for it to all click, and it'll never be done until I sit down and start working on it. And that's something I've understood about myself too. Is that sometimes my process involves, I can't fully conceptualize what I'm doing until I start, and then what it's missing, the pieces missing, become glaringly obvious. Like, oh, I didn't even know that was a problem I needed to solve. Let's fix that, because now I'm doing the thing. And that happens with a lot of, yard projects, woodworking, and different things I'm into. That's why I always over budget time as well too. I'm like, okay, I think this will take 2 hours. We're giving it 8 just in case. And I'll probably continue tomorrow because this is just the way I am. Yeah. You can't be so loosey goosey that nothing gets done. You can't be so rigid that you never take a step. So that's very true. Nothing wrong with a horseshoe, especially on a horse. little pithy things like that. Well, I don't know if you want to say, can you talk about the dream a little without giving away spoilers for the book, or is it better to just refer people to the chapter and you can tell them which one it is, and we'll leave it at that? I don't know how you want to approach it.
Well, let's step away from Blame It on the Moon and just go to this most recent dream. Okay. Because it's not tied to anything. It has nothing to do with any of the books.
Gotcha.
It wasn't a solution to any problem. It was just a bizarre experience.
Those are the best, yeah.
And it was pretty striking to me. So I captured in about 6 or 7 lines what I saw and what I remembered.
All right, so we're going to shift gears into the actual interpretation stuff. I'm going to write down the timestamp here. As per my usual process, number one, best advice I could give to anyone on almost anything. Step 1, shut up and listen. And then step 2, we're going to go back over it, and between the two of us, put together a kind of build a kind of collaborative understanding of what the symbolism might mean, and then we'll wrap up the show, and that's how we do the thing. So I'm ready when you are.
Benjamin the Dream Wizard wants to help you pierce the veil of night and shine the light of understanding upon the mystery of dreams. Every episode of his Dreamscapes program features real dreamers gifted with rare insight into their nocturnal visions. New Dreamscapes episodes appear every week on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and other video hosting platforms, as well as free audiobooks exploring the psychological principles which inform our dream experience, and much, much more. To join the Wizard as a guest, reach out across more than a dozen social media platforms and through the contact page at benjaminthedreamwizard.com, where you will also find the Wizard's growing catalog of historical dream literature available on Amazon, documenting the wisdom and wonder of exploration into the world of dreams over the past 2,000 years. That's Benjamin the Dream Wizard on YouTube and at benjaminthedreamwizard.com.
Okay. Well, the first thing, when I wrote down my memories, the first thing I wrote was a head on the wall. And what had happened, somebody I knew was in this small room, and I entered the small room. It was, the room had a glass front. There was a cot in the room. It was only about maybe a 8 by 12 room, closed up. And on the wall was a woman's head that was like hanging through a hole in the wall, face up. And I envisioned that possibly she didn't look well. And I envisioned that possibly on the other side of that wall, she was in some sort of a life support machine. And so I had that image. And then later, I was outside walking with her as a standing, talking, coherent, somewhat normal human being. But we returned to that same building, and I went one way and she slipped away. And when I returned to that room, there she was again, just the head on the wall, looking not well. Sometimes she would look dead. Other times she would have some minor animation, but she never smiled. And then I had one last note. Does it matter that the building had steps down to an apparent garage area? Because when she and I walked to the building together, I went down these steps to this other area, and when I came back, discovered she was the head on the wall again. But side note, it is not uncommon when I'm dreaming to recognize that I need a rest stop, and that in my dream, I will head off to the restroom. Now, for some reason in my dreams, the restroom is never available. The toilets are broken. And this is like a recurring event in almost all of my dreams. The restrooms aren't available, but at some point things are urgent enough that it's enough to wake me up and tell me, go to the bathroom, dummy. And that's very common. But the head on the wall was interesting to me. She resembled, almost resembled my mother in some way, which is probably a important piece. The head did. When she was a body, she didn't. So that's everything I captured from that experience.
That is interesting, and that is definitely one of the questions that I would ask during the process. Like, did you recognize the woman? Did she have features you would associate with anyone in particular? Another thing too, the idea of physical sensations experienced during sleep. A French researcher, I think he was French, in the mid to late 1800s, I think, he did things where he would have an assistant do different things to him while he was sleeping. One was tickle his nose with a feather. Another was put a warm water bottle on his feet, just different things. Mm-hmm. And he would report sensations. The warm water bottle on his feet, he said he had a vision, dream about, he was, his house had been broken into, and there were criminals who were torturing him by putting hot irons against his feet. So literally, sensations experienced during sleep, bodily sensations internally and externally, can absolutely influence dreams. So if you're, I'm sure there's folks out in the audience, if you're a man of a certain age, you know that the trips to the bathroom become more frequent. It just happens. And especially during sleep, if that's a sensation you have and it's strong enough to wake you up, that'll recur in dreams. And it also becomes a thing where it could have been a one-off and it never happened again and you would probably have forgotten about it. But because it's recurrent, it seems to be, I would, not to dismiss it, but I would chalk it up primarily to physical sensations, especially if it's confirmed by it was bad enough to wake me up, and I did go to the bathroom. So I don't know if I'd add too much more interpretation to that portion, but I don't know, could be. And it could have started as something else. And sometimes we get pathways in the brain that if they fire off multiple times over a long enough period of time, it becomes more easily triggered in the future. So the idea of recurrent features of almost like behavioral tics in a sense, and definitely patterns of thinking, patterns of responding to certain situations behaviorally, those become ingrained neural pathways that like as if it had its own consciousness. But I think you get what I'm saying. I'm not going to find a better way to express it. But
yeah, I think that piece, I think I would put aside, because like I said, it is very common, and in my dreams I will search for this restroom, and it's interesting how detailed the search can be, and how visual, and how going through different rooms and different places and different buildings, and some of those places and rooms and buildings recur as well in that thing. But I think what it's ultimately telling me is there is no bathroom available in this dream. You need to get up and
gotcha.
use a bathroom. So
I do remember.
I don't know what would happen if in the dream I actually had a functioning bathroom to use. I might wake up damp.
Yeah. Well, I had now that you mention it, I had a relatively similar experience that I dreamed, or I was having a dream. And it's one of those things where I was on the verge of waking up anyway. I was very close. It was in the morning, and I was close to when I would have awakened anyway. But I dreamed that I needed to go to the bathroom, and I did. I did need to go. It turned out in real life, I didn't go, but I had the dream that I was going, that I'd found the bathroom and I had let go. And then I realized I'm still in bed. And that shocked me out of the dream. And I was like checking my sheets, and I was fine. So there's a high likelihood it's not going to, that if you did, it would be a more, an indicator of sleepwalking, somnambulism. And that's a more chronic condition where you would have had indications of talking in your sleep, laughing in your sleep, getting up and moving around, doing other things, getting out of bed with no memory of it, going to the kitchen to make a midnight snack, full on BLT, all the fixins on a sandwich and no memory of it. And you ate it, all of that. You only found out because you left the mayo and the crumbs on the counter, and you're like, what happened here? And, and then you go and you look, and all these condiments are disturbed, and I must have done a thing. So anyway, I think it's unlikely, not impossible, but unlikely that you're going to have a dream where you release the bowels and it actually occurs. So that's probably unlikely. So, but it is a funny thing to contemplate. It's like, well, if it happens, you'll be like, oh, well, shit, that good times.
It reminds me of a recent cartoon I saw where it was the Golden Age Dating Institute, and the woman at the desk was interviewing somebody who wanted to join the dating thing. And she said to her, now I note here that you said that it was important that your partner have regular bowel movements. Does it matter if they're involuntary?
That's great. That could be a selling point. I mean, people are into all kinds of things. You never know. No, it just needs to be on command.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now we got this point. This is how my hands are covered in scratches. He wants to play. It's not time. It's not time, Bubba. We're going to put you down.
Yeah, my dog just came for a scratch as well.
Yep. And he's going to stop the recording like an idiot. I need to be able to write on my paper. Okay, you eat that hand. Give me this hand. So, okay, we got the beginning of the dream, and the first thing you remember is being in the room. That's kind of where the dream starts.
Yeah, I entered the room because somebody I knew was, I think, having a conversation with the head.
Okay. And when you entered the room, was there another person there, or that's you?
That person was there, but it seemed like they were quickly gone, and I was alone with the head. Although I did not have a conversation with the head at that point, I was just observing the trying to figure out why there was a head on the wall.
Okay, so that's interesting. It was your attention was brought to it because someone else was having a conversation. Then, there's blood. Yep, he got me. It was finally enough to get the compressed air out. That's one of the things I like to do so I don't spray my notes. But let's just kind of try and seal that wound. It's a fascinating thing. So that's like the concept I'm getting, or that it reminds me of. And the way this works is I'm going to say a bunch of shit. I'm going to rattle a bunch of doorknobs. And if you don't feel like it makes any sense, tell me, no, that's not it. And I'm happy to be wrong. But the impression I get is the idea of watching someone else doing something and then an imitation of it, or your attention brought to something by someone else. You observe an interaction or have knowledge, and seeing something in your dream, hearing something is the same as knowing something. None of it's actually happening physically. So even if you just had knowledge that a person was in the room having a conversation with a lady whose head was stuck through the wall and her body was on the other side, and that knowledge of a prior conversation is what prompted you to enter and investigate in a way. So there's something like that going on. Or what do you think about that general concept in the beginning?
Yeah, that works.
Yeah. So I mean, what to make of that? I'm not sure, of course, but something like alerted by others' actions, something like that. I was gonna make a note of that. I don't know what to do with that. And then you go, and then you enter the room, and you get the lay of the land, and you get that it's a small room. It's like 8 by 12, and what I wrote down was someone I knew, and it turns out the head through the wall has features or resemblance or evokes thoughts of your mother. But was the person who was in the room previously also someone you knew?
I knew it was someone that I knew, but I could not identify them in any way.
Okay.
They were almost immediately not there once I entered the room.
Yeah.
Once I entered the room, I was alone with the person, and I was trying to understand the existence of the room. It had a glass front on it. It had a cot, and it had a head on the wall.
And a glass front on it, I mean, one of the walls was completely like a large glass window, basically like meant for observation.
It was like, well, no, because it was a frosted glass. So from the outside, it was just a wall of frosted glass.
Okay.
From the inside, I recognized that it was a glass enclosure, felt like a sealed enclosure.
So the whole thing was made of a frosted glass in a way?
Just the front wall.
Just the
front side
wall.
walls, the back walls were all solid. And a very dark color. I don't know what the color was. It was just dark.
Gotcha. Well, that might mean something. It might not. We might not figure it out. I'm not sure. The only thing in there was a small cot. There was no table, no chairs, no other, no pictures on the wall, just the hole in the cot.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. It was off against the right wall.
Okay. Yeah, and relative to the doorway to the room, you said so. Is the doorway the front in a way so that the doorway is in the frosted glass, or was that another wall?
Doorway's in the frosted glass.
Okay. Gotcha. And that's interesting too. Why not a solid wall? I like to consider those counterfactuals. It's like, it was definitely not, it was opaque, but so there's a, this feels like it might relate to the idea of knowing there was something in there of interest in a way. Like, not only did you have knowledge that someone else had been in there and had a conversation with this person, but there was something about there's something about the nature of an opaque glass where it's like, there's something on the other side of it, and it's more in a way that a solid wall doesn't allow you to know that. Like, you can even see shadows through opaque frosted glass. So it's like, all of these things are pointing it towards giving reasons or justification for entering the room. Like, why would I go in there? What do I want out of this? How did I even know it was a thing? Well, you're racking up little clues, pieces of evidence that say there's something to be gained, or at least something of interest to see by entering this space. So yeah, that's very interesting too. So, and you said what was the position of the head on the wall? I mean, was it near the ceiling, down near the floor, exactly in the middle?
It was about midway.
In a way where where would that put the head in relation to you standing? Were you able to look at the face, or was the face above you looking at the ceiling?
It was about even.
Okay.
So yes, I was able to see the face.
That speaks to the idea, perhaps, of how not realistic, but possible, I suppose it is, to have communication with it, to see an expression. In the position of it too. Is it above you? Is it below? Is it like it's down near the floor? That's weird. You're looking way down on something. You're not on the level with it. But in this one, seems like the ideal height for communication. In a way, you can see the face. Right. You can have a conversation. And when you first said this, is like head on the wall. Okay, trophy. Severed. What do we got? What's going on here? But no, it's a person. And what popped into my head was the idea of an iron lung. Where just that. Yeah. Did you have that impression when you woke up or during the dream?
Yes. During the dream and after I woke up, that was my sense of what was possibly on the other side of the wall that would leave only the head.
Yeah. And that certainly also speaks to the idea of her being, sickly, ill with something, and that, right. There was a purpose behind the whole. It wasn't frivolous. It wasn't torture. It was like, this is actually something that's necessary good for her in a way, or necessary to keep her alive. Even if she spends brief periods of time out, she has to return to it. Some recuperative or life sustaining process is going on there. Got it. And you did mention, like as if on the other side of the wall, some life support machine. And then, so did you begin to have any kind of conversation with her, or the interaction didn't actually occur until you were outside?
The interaction didn't occur until we were outside, and then we were walking together in a open park-like area on a nice day and having, I think we had some conversation, but it was, there was no substance to it. It was just like killing time conversation. And when I got back and I went one way, she kind of drifted off. And when I got back to where she was the head on the wall again, my sense was that my time with her as a walking, standing, talking human being maybe never really happened.
Okay.
Or that it was more of a, paranormal-like experience than a real happening. That maybe she had still always been on the wall that whole time.
Okay. Do you have any sense of, you said it was just a more frivolous or killing time, or what do you call it when it's superficial? Small talk is the word I was looking for. Yeah, small talk. Did you have the sense or any indication of what the small talk was? Any topics that came up, even if it was just the weather? I mean, it could have been anything, but nothing really. Just this impression of walking with her.
Right.
And it was definitely you, and it was definitely her.
Yes.
Okay. You weren't. It wasn't a vision of as if you were someone else. Did you see anyone else in the park, or what kind of a park was it? Mostly grass, mostly trees. Was there a lake?
No, just two people walking along.
Gotcha. Okay. Any sense of how she was dressed? Like, you can only see the head through the wall in the room, but
Yeah, she was dressed in, I want to say like just slacks and a blouse.
Okay.
Nothing distinctive.
Any colors pop to mind?
No,
Okay.
no,
Fair enough.
again, dark.
But dark clothing.
Not black, but dark tone.
Yeah.
Almost like a dark purple or something.
Fair enough. And was it during this section of the dream that the impression came to you that she reminded you of your mother?
No, actually, I think it was after that when I saw her on the wall again that I thought, the hair in particular made me think of a picture of my mother.
Okay. Yeah, because when you mentioned walking in the park, I mean, the first thing I think of is like, if I'm going to take a walk with a girl in a park, and I rather like slightly longish sundresses. So I think that came to my mind. And actually, see, this is why I asked these questions. She was like, it's not my dream. I'm not having these visions. I got to have you show me what you're seeing, or at least tell me it so I can see it as well as I could. So, but, in rather dark colored. So there may be a connection with the dark colored room, dark colored clothing. There's, what is it to put paint on a wall? It's a decoration. Clothing, in a sense, it could be any color. We choose the decorative nature of our own self display in that sense too. But the idea of slacks and a blouse, was that how your mother used to dress in a way? Was she kind of a pants gal or more of a dress gal, or variable, or any connection there at all?
Variable, but no real connection from that.
Gotcha. Okay, fair enough. It might not mean anything, but in terms of your mother's personality, tended towards the I don't want to say dark thoughts first, but some people are just naturally bubbly and positive, and some people are a little more we'd say pessimistic, but they would just say realistic.
Well, I'd say my mother was my biggest influence on my writing. Because she took interest in my reading and my writing when I was quite young.
Yeah, and I'm glad you did mention. I don't want to harp on it too much, but there's obviously a connection. Why would she remind you of her? But it wasn't her, and that's another thing too. It's like there's the quality to this woman, or specifically to the hair, perhaps, that evoked that feeling. So I'm kind of probing around that a little bit to see how far that connection goes. It might not go much further than that. It might just be exactly that idea of, let's say I listened to a podcaster, and he reminds me of a friend of mine. And a lot of it is just in the way he speaks, his delivery of certain phrases and whatnot. But otherwise, he's very different. I mean, they're not the same person. It's not like, oh my God, they're twins separated at birth. But just every time I listen to him, I'm like, yeah, that's how Bob would have said that. That's the kind of laugh he would have given at that moment in the story. But it doesn't look anything like him. Doesn't have anything else in common with him. But just evoking that message and that where the comparison is matters as well as where it's not. So that may be something to do with it. But there was a return to the room and a parting of ways, and during that was also this detour you made to the parking garage.
Right.
So it's not like you both went into the room and then went separate ways. It was as you were walking back, returning from the trip to the park.
Yeah, and I went one way, and I don't know what happened to her, but the next time I saw her, when I came back from where I was, she was the head on the wall again.
Can you recall any prompting or scenery around you during the parting ways portion of the park trip? What I mean is, like, did you get to a certain point in a path? Was there any topic of conversation that came up? Was there any discussion? Well, we better head back. Anything like that? Any other details about how you got to the point of going separate ways? You would imagine you were both going to the same place, but you took different paths to get there. That's interesting.
Yeah, we had arrived at the building, and I went down one hallway in the other building, and she just, I don't know where she went.
Gotcha. And it was you kind of walked away from her to go on a side mission. Gotcha. It wasn't like you actually, approached the hallway and took different. Well, maybe that is kind of what it was, but it was more of like you just moved on in a different direction and no knowledge of what she did or where she went. So
exactly.
So, yeah. And it, because counterfactual, it could have been the other way around. You both entered a space and suddenly she walked away from you. No, but it was you. You detoured. You left.
Yeah.
So just to get that down as a sequence of events might mean something, might not. It's hard to tell with some of these things. Sometimes we elements of the story. I'm sure they all mean something in some ways, but some of them are minor in a point that, like, we may never get it and it may not mean anything that much. But I think there is something to that idea of, you ending the experience by physically walking away. There's something there in terms of where it brought you back around to, and this concept that none of that may have happened at all, that it might have been a shared mental projection in a way, or some other kind of experience, a vision that you were shown by the person or by the circumstance itself. Very interesting with that kind of, could have been a daydream in the middle of it. Like, what would it be like if this person could get up and walk around and take a walk with me, even if we talked about nothing, even if it was just a walk in the park and we just made small talk and then at some point it has to end. And the reason you detoured, do you remember that before you went, or it was for the bathroom trip? You're like, well, I better go find a bathroom.
Bathroom trip. Yeah.
There's an interesting thing there too, of like a pleasant experience interrupted by practical concerns, a necessity of that kind. I have some of the same issues because I'm always, my mouth is chronically dry. So I probably drink 10 of these a day, way more than I should probably. So I'm always looking for a bathroom too. And you got back to the room. She was back in the hole in the wall, even possibly never having left. Any further happenings or interactions other than just returning to the room and seeing that she's in the same place?
Well, I think that I had kind of popped in there several times just to look at her, and that's where sometimes she seemed completely dead. But again, that I noticed she never smiled. And I don't recall having any actual conversational exchange with her when she was the head on the wall.
Okay. The distinct impression that maybe, in a different environment, there was communication, even if it was frivolous or small talk, communication nonetheless, but none when she's in that state of being in the room and in the hole in the wall. And sometimes looking unwell up unto wondering if she's dead, at least, or looking like she's dead, and never a smile. Certainly unhappy about her condition, or unmoved to mirth, or that kind of thing. Some circumstances where it's just you don't feel like smiling, so you don't, and that's appropriate to the situation too. It's like, this is miserable. I think I'll frown, or at least. I'm just tired of everything. It's just a neutral exhaustion in a way. Interesting. So there's there's your observation leading to catching your attention that there's something to see here. There's this opaque glass in a sense where it's like, what is it? It reminds me of that phrase, through a glass, see through a glass darkly. And sometimes that's the best we can get, unless we part in more metaphors, part the veil and go beyond to step in and look at what's going on there. And then your attention was called to this thing. And, by observing someone else, you find a very strange circumstance. And there are reasons that it makes sense. Like, okay, so she looks ill, therefore this must be related to her illness. And, but her response to it is very reasonable as well. Like, this is miserable. She doesn't smile. Sometimes she's so sick she looks dead. But when you got the lay of the land, you went beyond that dark glass and got a firsthand look at it. What occurred then was this, at least a vision or a fantasy of the ability to take a walk and communicate with her in just a normal spending time with you kind of thing. And that eventually ended on its own. There's a circuit to a walk. You go out, you got to come back sometime. And there's this deviation for practical concerns, which you had to pursue. And there was no sense of a discussion of like, well, I'll see you in the room after I'm done. It was, I just got to go. It's something I got to take care of. And it's interesting that it was a parking garage. Did you ever find a bathroom or, what's that?
I don't think it worked.
Yeah. Looking.
I did find one, but it was probably
broken.
Not working as they often are in my dreams.
Interesting. Yeah. And then, just plugging that back in of like, oh, here's this again. But so we look at that as why wasn't it, you went into another section of an office building and there were desks. I mean, why wasn't it, you went back to the park because you remembered there was supposed to be a bathroom there, or it's like, why a parking garage? What does that mean to you? I'm not sure if you have any associations come to mind with that type of a space.
Well, I have had pretty much a lifelong hobby with cars and motorcycles and owning a number of hobby cars. I don't know if that's, and some of the other stray dreams I've had have had to do with garages as well.
Okay. But this one, I guess what I think of a parking garage is that it's got the slowly escalating ramp that goes up stacked upon each other, and there's rows and rows of cars, and you find it in an urban area where there's, you have to have vertical parking or was it a different kind of garage?
It was just a large open garage. There were a couple of steps down to it, and then it was just a bunch of parking spaces inside.
Interesting. Any particulars of the cars?
I don't believe it was a multi-level.
Okay. Well, that's why I asked. Yeah, that's a little different. So, yeah, possibly a reference to distracted by a hobby in a way, or there's other. As much as it is good to say visit with a friend or whoever, have pleasant conversation on a walk through the park, there's also this pull or a need to show yourself the vision of a related to a hobby or a personal interest. There's an interest in the circumstances of other people, and then here's an icon of a personal interest in a way. Like, here's my hobby, here's what makes me happy, or things like that. That's interesting. Not sure what to make of that. But then this experience ends, whatever it was, and the idea that was that even real? Who knows? And there's an interesting thing there too. I'm saying interesting a lot. That's my verbal tick today, apparently. What was I going to say? I had it. I can stop commenting on my own thoughts. I get sidetracked. But relationships in general, like there's reasons to say be curious about someone, and that there's natural curiosity about their circumstances, and especially people who are struggling with things that they look like they're not doing well. And there's something in there maybe of like speaking to the theme of someone who's struggling with something and showing it to yourself as a, well, that something is as serious as if, it isn't that literally, someone who's in an iron lung and this dream was about them, but there's ideas of being trapped in a space where this idea of the head poking, why wasn't she completely behind glass in a hospital bed? I mean, why this representation of it? There's something about the idea of sticking a head through the wall where it appears that they're available for interaction, but only from the neck up, and really most of them is inaccessible, and in a way they're also kind of on display in a sense, but then also you didn't really have any communication with them there. It wasn't until you got them out of that environment where it was possible to have that, or at least the desire is, if I could get them away, if we could take a walk in the park, maybe we could have just a pleasant conversation. It doesn't even have to be about anything important, just the act of communicating itself. And then to be diverted by personal things. So there's examining and looking at someone else's life and their struggles, but also, I've got my own interest too. I mean, how invested am I in this? Well, invested enough to come back then and to check in multiple times and reassess. There's this idea of, you didn't just come back once, have an interaction and leave, but you checked in multiple times and you were almost like testing for what is it? Running multiple instances of a scientific experiment to say, okay, if I check now, does it look the same? What if I check now? What if I check now? Is it changing over time? And sometimes they looked like they were doing much worse until you ask, are they dead? So there were some very, very dire circumstances. But even when they didn't look dead-ish, they still never smiled. So this person's suffering with this, they're finding no amusement in it, no reason to feel good about life or positive in that regard. And that probably translates to the dark tones. I mean, someone who's suffering or in a dark place, literally in a dark place, a room with dark walls that's in a dark place, and wearing dark clothes, even if you get them out there, they're still bringing that darkness, whatever they're experiencing with them. They're still going to be the same person in a different environment. Where was I going with that? Okay. Having said all of that stuff and given some impressions and suggestions, when did this dream happen exactly? Or do not exactly, like to the minute, but 2 weeks ago, yesterday?
Was let me think what today is. It was a week and a half ago.
Okay. Now that we've kind of discussed around some of the themes that seem to be there, can you think of anything that you've been contemplating during that time or experiencing? I mean, have you dealt with someone in your life who's struggling and you're not sure how to help them, or you miss spending time with them, but you can't be someone's sole emotional support. You've got your own hobbies and interests as well. You get your car things to do sometimes because that makes you happy. I don't know if anything like that comes to mind.
Well, yeah, and honestly, from your questions, whenever I have a dream, I try to figure out what happened in my life to trigger the pieces that made that dream
That's what
happen.
we're looking for. Yeah.
And based on your questions, I think I have every single piece of everything that triggered this dream and what it probably meant. And I think your analysis is probably almost spot on to what it meant.
Wow.
So the circumstances were, at the time I had the dream, I was traveling on a book tour. So I was at Bridgewater College in Virginia. And during that time, I talked to several classes and I did some public readings, and so my mind would have been on writing. And I was alone. My wife, the dog weren't traveling with me. I was alone in a hotel room. And 3 days after I got back from that trip, immediately went on another trip, which was a writing trip as well. But then I had it occurred to me it was October 20th, which is the anniversary of my mother's death.
Oh.
My mom died in 1989, so it was the 36th anniversary of her death. So I'm traveling alone. I have this dream. Books are on my mind. Mom was the biggest influence on my reading and writing. And I'm on the eve of her passing. So I could see where, and she passed slowly. She passed over several years. It was a long. So I could explain that in that sense of, well, there's mom. I can't always get to her, but she's struggling, and she's my biggest influence. But oh, by the way, I have other influences and other things that I do.
Mhm.
But I want to check in on her, and I want to walk with her. I want to have a conversation with her. But it really can't happen in any consequential way. So I could explain all that. And then what strikes me as funny when I'm sitting here looking at my picture, I have heads on the wall behind me.
Yeah, it's true.
And these were an artist friend who recently moved, and she was clearing out some of her inventory so she didn't have to move it, and she gifted me these heads. But they're always present when I'm writing. Where I'm sitting right now is where I do all my writing. So I don't know if that could have, I don't know. I mean, I can back into all those explanations and say, what you laid out, I can explain now fully in things that happened in real life during that time.
Yeah.
That may have totally created that experience.
The way you describe it, I mean, yeah, strong feelings motivate most things, most of our thoughts, most of our actions. It's no wonder the Greeks conceived of love and war as gods, because they drive the impetus towards those things drives our behavior. And we described us as the playthings of the gods. They just put these feelings in us and make us do things, cursing the gods, that kind of thing. So there's always going to be some kind of a question or a feeling or something that's going on. I describe dreams as thought experiments. A lot of times, sometimes you're just contemplating a thing. Well, what is that? What does that look like? How does that work? And then we show ourselves. But also, how am I feeling? What is going on in my life right now that is important to me? Anniversaries are a big deal, and I think there's an interesting quality to it as well. Of like, at the very least, her hair made you think of your mom. So it didn't even have to be her, but the concept of what she represents in your life. There's also an interesting thing as you were talking. I got to stop using that word. As you were saying that, you're returning from this walk and you went your separate ways and you don't know what happened to her. And there was a moment when she, at least a time when she died, and it's not like you weren't there, but at some point in your journey, suddenly she wasn't there anymore, even though you kept going. And you, in your mind, at least, also return to thinking about her frequently, or at least frequently is not the right way to put it, but periodically. It's a recurrent thought of, and I'm sure that's going to happen to me. My parents are probably don't have many years left either, but hopefully many, many more. But at some point they I will outlive them, and I think I'll think of them from time to time as well, and what they meant to me and how they encouraged me. One thing we never really, again, I completely forgot until just a minute ago, but the idea of the cot in the room, and I guess maybe that could have symbolized the general idea of, as you were saying, traveling, hotel rooms, like these beds aren't any better than a cot in a room. Just a place. I just need a place to sleep. So
even stronger than that, the last more than a year, life. She was in Northern Virginia, and all the rest of the family was in Northern Virginia. I lived in Pennsylvania at the time. I was working my corporate job. But she was at home. But somebody needed to be with her all the time.
A cot by the bedside.
And so the family took that responsibility during the week, and I came down every weekend and spent the entire weekend with her by her bedside. So I don't know, maybe that was my cot.
Yeah, exactly. And that makes me think I've worked in hospital settings before as part of my 20 years in psychology. And very often when people are, if they're in the hospital at end of life, family will be allowed to sleep at the bedside. And then what they had though was these chairs that were like, they would convert into a little,
Right.
in a way, a lounger, and it would just lay flat, and then it would be a makeshift bed. But in the days before that, it would be a cot, that kind of a thing. Yeah, for sure. And thinking of, someone who's in a stage of their life where they're physically deteriorating, because that's what it's like as you're dying. It can be as, there's an analogy to the idea of being in an iron lung. It's like, this person is severely limited in their abilities to move around. And it's an illness that feels as severe as being trapped in that kind of a condition. Yeah. And then I can imagine most people are not very happy with their body falling apart, and the idea that, they might not wake up again tomorrow. You never know how soon that kind of thing happens.
And when we could communicate, before we got closer to the end, her biggest fear was that she would not be able to communicate, but that her mind would still be active.
That
and that
is a
she would
scary
just
thought.
be trapped and not be able to interact, but just trapped in the body. And so,
yeah, now that speaks to that whole head through the wall
Right.
type of thing, and not any communication there. And then at the very least having a that fantasy of fulfilling a desire to then take a walk and have a conversation about nothing important, just spending time together. I think the lack of content is important to that experience as well.
Right.
The idea is we weren't talking about, she wasn't giving me her secret recipes, or we weren't to solving the world's philosophical problems, or just chilling, spending time together. I had another thought. No, it's gone. That's okay. Well, I mean, yeah, if the process brought that out to you, okay, this is where I was going with it. Just the last thing, I guess. What do you think it was your travels and being away from home that then led you to feeling homesick and led you to feeling missing your mother more? You think that's the connection that maybe brought the dream on?
I think it was probably because the travels and away from home isn't all that unusual. But
and some people don't get homesick. I don't think I do in general. I'm like, I would rather be home, but it's not like I'm homesick. I think it's a different experience.
Yeah. But in my conversations with the students and talking about the books, I strongly cover my mother's influence on that.
Gotcha. So that brought it to mind. Okay.
Yeah. And then the fact that I was only, days away from the anniversary of her death, probably heightened that without me being aware of any of it.
Yeah.
Until we're having this conversation, thinking, "Wow, that all
and then
makes
suddenly
sense
it makes
now."
sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I think that's the assessment I have of my own process, which I don't understand it either. I'm going to write a book about it someday when I do understand it. I just started doing this and asking questions like I do, and trying to see it as well as clearly as I can, and saying, "What do you think about this idea?" I think that's why it works. Is it puts people back in that state of mind, and then they can kind of go, "Oh, all these connections to these real." So sometimes dreams they're going to be problem solving, they're going to be clarifying, and sometimes they're in a sense just wish fulfillment in a way, or So it can be the different types of dream experiences. It seems like this one is not something you're going to get a grand revelation from. It's just the acknowledgement of an experience and crystallizing it in a way in this form. And then the reason it would stick with you is not because the answer was important to some task you had to do or or anything like that, but just to say, these are really strong feelings that I had. And these are the regrets that I have. It's not like regret. You can miss someone without regretting it. You didn't do anything wrong. There's nothing you could have changed necessarily, other than you just wish she was still here. I miss my mom. Yeah. And sometimes that can be the emotional content that really makes a dream stick out and makes it worth looking at it. So at least you can go, I don't have to worry about this as in terms of, am I missing something? Getting an analysis of it doesn't accomplish anything more than settling your mind on it a little bit. Okay, now it's not a mystery anymore. I don't have to worry about it. So, well, if you feel satisfied, I think that was a fantastic discussion about the topic, and I always appreciate it when people give me a little pat on the head and say, Ben, this was not a waste of my time. That's all I'm doing this for, honestly.
No, I enjoyed the process, and it really did. The dream hadn't been troubling me, but it was significant enough I had to record it.
Yeah.
And in the conversation, I think I have, like I said, I do try and figure out when I have a dream how it relates to circumstances. And that's why, like, the one that drove the book was so striking to me because it didn't relate to anything. It was a different time period. It was different geographical. It related to absolutely nothing, but it gave me a book.
Yeah.
And it gave me a book that gave me a second and a third book. And I don't know. But there is some paranormal elements in the Blame It on the Moon book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't ask the genre, sci-fi, alternate history.
It's a haunted house mystery.
Gotcha. Okay. With some supernatural stuff.
But it's placed in, the house was a field hospital during the Civil War.
Okay.
So there's a lot of the Civil War history that comes into it as well. And particularly some medical history. And
living in Virginia, you're just steeped in it, right? It's all over.
Right. Yeah. Sure.
Well, it struck me that this you could turn this dream into a part of the book, and I immediately went to psychic powers, sci-fi type of stuff where the main character has to visit someone who knows something, and she is in this condition, unable to communicate. However, she can reach out and have a conversation in his mind. And where does she talk to him? She takes him on a walk in the park in his head, and that's where she communicates, and he gets his wisdom or direction from that. It's like she's a witch in the wilderness in a way. Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's the first thing I thought of when you were like relating it to a book and supernatural. So anyway.
Well, I'm still working on that third book and starting on the fourth. So
I won't steal your idea, even though I really want to. That's fantastic.
Maybe I'll stick Mom in there somehow subliminally.
Yeah, maybe that's what this was about, is like, she can in a way live on. Put her in your book. And she'll be there forever. She will be immortalized. Yeah. That might actually be a great tribute. That might really honor her and honor your feelings for her in that way. I would probably encourage that as like something I guarantee you will not regret doing that. Yeah. So, okay. Well, if you're satisfied by what we got, we don't have to drag it out too long. Unless you had any additional questions, anything we missed, anything you think was important.
No, this was great. I had no expectations of what we were going to do or where we were going to go. And I totally enjoyed the conversation. I really did.
Nice.
And appreciate you having me.
That is when I really shine, when people have no expectations. Then I can dazzle. Well, on that note, let's do the outro here. This has been oh boy, I can't read very well. This has been our guest dreamer, Dr. Lou Pugliese. He is a former automotive exec and retired professor of organizational development. He is an author of Blame It on the Moon, the prequel Final Exam, and the forthcoming title The Portal. You can find him at loupuglieseauthor.com, and that link will be in the description below. For my part, very quickly, would you kindly like, share, and subscribe? Always need more volunteer dreamers. I do video game streams Monday through Fridays, 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Pacific most days. This episode specifically brought to you by, in part by ABC Book 18, Oniro Chronologia, Volume 4, Prima Reliquorum. And you can find, of course, all this and more at BenjaminTheDreamWizard.com. And if you'd head on over to BenjaminTheDreamWizard.locals.com, it's free to join, attached to my Rumble account, building a community there. One of the best places to reach out to me. And just once again, Lou, thank you for being here. I have enjoyed talking to you as well, of course.
Thank you. Thank you, Benjamin.
Good deal. And everybody out there, thank you for listening. And we hope to see you next time. Take care.